Happy anniversary, everyone! Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for your favorite sassy caster, Vinci. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively and an overall grade, comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. So let's take a look at Vinci's stats. Vinci has a max HP of 14,259, which is average for a 5-star caster and pretty high overall when compared to all the other 5-star servants. Her max attack of 10,598 is again average for a 5-star caster, but due to the 0.9 times caster damage modifier, her effective attack of 9,538 is very low for a 5-star servant. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Inherent Wisdom rank EX. It has an 85% chance to increase your defense for 3 turns between 20 and 30%. It also has an 85% chance to increase your NP strength for 1 turn between 20 and 30%. And it applies Guts 1 time for 3 turns between 1,000 and 3,000, all depending on level. Her second skill is Golden Rule Body rank B, which applies Nullified Debuff for 2 turns, restores HP between 500 and 1,000 per turn for 3 turns, depending on level, and increases your Noble Phantasm gauge per turn by 10% for 3 turns. And finally, her last skill is Pioneer of the Stars rank EX, which increases her NP gauge between 30 to 50% depending on level, and also applies Ignore Invincibility for 3 turns, and grants 10 crit stars. Taking a look at her passives, she has Territory Creation rank A, which increases her arts card effectiveness by 10%, and Item Construction rank A, which increases her debuff success rate by 10%. Moving on to her deck and Noble Phantasm, she has an Arts deck with Quick, Arts Buster, and an Arts Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Uomo Universale, which increases NP strength for 1 turn between 30 to 70% depending on overcharge, and deals heavy damage to all enemies that ignores defense with between a 450 and 750% damage modifier depending on level. It also decreases enemy critical hit rate by 10%. This can also be strengthened through an interlude, which will increase the damage modifier to between 600 and 900% depending on level. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her Quick card hits 4 times, her Arts hits 3 times, her Buster hits once, and her Extra attack hits 4 times. She has a Noble Phantasm gain rate of 0.54% and a star rate of 10.8%. She has high Noble Phantasm gain due to the high hit counts and the 3 art card deck, and average star generating despite the 1 Quick card because of the high hit counts. Continuing the trend of aggressive casters, we have Vinci, our very first offensive AoE 5-star caster. And she plays very similarly to all the 4-star AoE casters in that her objective is to spam her Noble Phantasm as much as possible. And this is something she does very well. Vinci boasts 2 Noble Phantasm charge skills, Pioneer of the Stars and Golden Rule Body. Her Pioneer of the Stars skill is the exact same as the ones found on Tesla and Drake, and it continues to be a strong skill on Vinci. Not only does it give her a huge boost to her Noble Phantasm gauge, but it also lets her hit through evade and invincibility for 3 turns, making it pretty valuable for enemy servant fights. And because the Noble Phantasm charge is so large, Vinci can easily Noble Phantasm multiple times in a row. Golden Rule Body is very similar to Maeve's skill and gives Vinci a good amount of tankiness on top of more Noble Phantasm charge. This skill makes Vinci pretty hard to take down or debuff, and it helps her synergize better in arts and stall teams. But most importantly, it helps her take full advantage of the Black Grailcraft essence, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And finally, Vinci's last skill is Inherent Wisdom rank EX. It's the same as Tesla's skill. It grants a big buff to defense and Noble Phantasm strength, as well as Guts on a very short cooldown. It is RNG based, however, with an 85% chance of activating the defense and Noble Phantasm buffs, they will activate fairly frequently, so that's a minor demerit on an otherwise monstrous skill. It is also worth noting that the Guts lasts 3 turns and has a 5-turn cooldown, meaning Vinci can have Guts active for most of the battle, further strengthening her defense and stall viability. I recommend leveling Inherent Wisdom first for the major damage and survivability boost, followed by Golden Rule Body for further survivability and synergy with Black Grail, and then finally Pioneer of the Stars. But while Vinci has the tools to be very defensive, she also has good firepower in the form of her Noble Phantasm. She has another Noble Phantasm buff tied to her Noble Phantasm, so if you use this Noble Phantasm last in an NP chain and give it enough overcharge, it can do some good damage. It also ignores defense, making Da Vinci another one of the few servants who can hit through enemy evasion, invincibility, and defense buffs. So keep that in mind for more challenging boss fights. And she is built to shoot her Noble Phantasm off like a machine gun thanks to her naturally high NP gain, 3 art card deck, and host of NP charging skills. Da Vinci plays a very good mix of offense and defense, being both incredibly stally but capable of some heavy damage in the proper setup. I hesitate to call her an all-rounder though, because she has one critical element that she's lacking, and it doubles as her major weakness, and that is a lack of support skills. Even as an offensive caster, being able to lend support is necessary, since Berserkers are going to always outpace you in terms of being the better damage option against assassins. So while Da Vinci can put out good Noble Phantasm damage in the right setup, the 0.9 times caster damage modifier is still a thing, and because a large portion of her Noble Phantasm damage comes from an RNG skill and her Noble Phantasm overcharge, her damage can be extremely inconsistent and downright pathetic if you're not lucky. She can overcome poor damage with her high volume of Noble Phantasms, but there's no replacing her poor non-Noble Phantasm damage and the lack of utility skills. If you are using Da Vinci, she really only works in an arts team as an offensive servant to be supported or as a staller that can do some chip damage. If you're focusing on her offensive power, then you can mitigate some of her low damage by pairing her with good buffers like Nero Bride, Tamamo, and Waver. All 3 synergize perfectly with her, giving her attack buffs, defensive support, and enabling her to Noble Phantasm spam even more. Alternatively, Mozart, Hans, Helena, Shuten, and Edison work wonderfully too. Edison in particular can overcharge her Noble Phantasm to bolster her damage considerably. If you want to make use of her defensive skills, then pair her with Tamamo, Waver, Media Lily, Mashu, Jean, Irisfiel, Hans, or George. Da Vinci's Bondcraft Essence is Almighty Wisdom and Fundamental Knowledge. It boosts all allies' Noble Phantasm strength by 20%, and this goes very well with her and fits her style. It also gives her some team utility. However, the best craft essence for Da Vinci by far is Black Grail. She's one of the best Black Grail users because Golden Rule Body will pretty much offset the burn damage that Black Grail does to you, and because she spams her Noble Phantasm so much, she'll get a lot of use out of it, without any downside. As alternatives, Heaven's Feel and Formal Craft also work well, and if you want to go for more survivability, then go with Maiden Halloween or Bridal Training for more healing synergy. And if you're using her alongside another offensive art servant like Saberlot or Li Shuen, then 2030 and Go West are very strong choices. And I advise against using NP gain craft essences like Divine Banquet or Prisma Cosmos because Da Vinci already has enough Noble Phantasm gain, and you're better off focusing on her damage instead. Although if you really want more NP gain, then I recommend Faithful Companions because it also comes with an arts buff. Overall, Da Vinci's a pretty effective servant that's surprisingly underrated. She packs a lot of tools in her skill set that allow her to be a strong attacker thanks to her NP spam and NP strength buffs. She also pierces evade, invincibility, and defense buffs, giving her good usability in a variety of scenarios. And she has a heavily defensive skill set with debuff immunity, short cooldown guts, and an auto heal coupled with really good HP, making her very tanky. Unfortunately, she doesn't have any support skills, making her team utility very low, which is especially detrimental to casters. She suffers from inconsistent damage because of the reliance on an RNG skill and overcharge from her Noble Phantasm, and of course the caster damage modifier does hamper her significantly as an offensive caster. In particular, her non-Noble Phantasm damage suffers very noticeably from her low attack because she has no attack buffs to compensate. So overall, Da Vinci gets a B from me. She has some significant upsides, especially from her skill set, but also some very deep low points too. I think she's just one strengthening quest away from being great, If she received the same buff that Tesla got for his inherent wisdom skill, her strength would be dramatically improved. But as she is, she's still very usable and quite powerful in the right team. Well, those are my thoughts on the Vinci. As a side note, I did find it curious while doing this video that all of her skills are borrowed from other servants. Specifically, she borrows 2 skills from Tesla and 1 from Maeve. I wonder if there's some kind of lore reason for that. If you know, do let me know in the comments below. And also let me know what you think of Da Vinci and if you plan to roll for her. Also, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I will see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. So Roni out. Later.